Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 28th of November, the day after Thanksgiving, we're going to be doing some favorite flies, guide flies. You'll want to take special notice. If you're a trout fisher, you're going to want to know about these. And the weekly tip, well, one of them comes from Australia, and the other one is a Cricut. We'll talk about that later. But for right now, we're the Beattys from Boise, Idaho. And I can see right now I got to change something here. Pull over as close as you can. I've been waving at people and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, the camera is cute little camera that follows people.
Yeah, it started to follow me. Now let me turn off the follow. Oh, okay, now it's turned off. Now we're back to normal. Okay, good. All right, let's see. We're going to get started with Gretchen tonight.
Okay, this first fly that I'm tying is what we call the Guides Prince, and it's a takeoff on the Prince Nymph. Prince Nymph is one of the favorite flies on the Yellowstone. I've caught a lot of fish on a Prince Nymph on the Yellowstone. So when Al was guiding, lots of times he would call me when he got off the river and say, make some more Prince Nymphs, because the shop that we tied for and that he guided for did not carry this fly. So I would put together some, and they're fast and they're easy and they're good. So what more can you ask for?
Now the shop did carry Prince Nymphs, the original ones, but you notice these are made with well, Gretchen will talk about it, but it's got Antron, and there's that extra little bit of sparkle that on most days, well, seem to work better.
Yeah, it's the guy, we call it the Guides Prince. It's not a regular Prince Nymph.
Okay,
So
you ready for a recipe on that?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I use a 2XL hook. I use 2XL most of the time when I'm using a bead. If I were not using a bead, I probably would have used a 1X hook. Gold bead, black thread, brown Antron yarn, and white Antron yarn. And this is, as you can see when we get over to the materials, what kind of Antron I'm using. Wire, I'm using copper wire, peacock herl, and brown hackle. If you look over here at the materials, the Antron that I'm using is this Lure Flash Antron body wool, and it works real good for what we want to do. So let's get started. You want to get a hook for me?
Yeah, let's get into that. And I'm going to take a moment here and get a hook tipped up in the vise there for you and get this out. And you want this up so you can, like that, right?
Yes, I do. Well, gosh, I'm going to have to change it to on. I will.
No, I'll do it. No, I'll take care of it.
Okay, the first thing I want to do is to put my bead on. And so I always start off with the hook in this position. And I keep my beads in this little container like this. What I've started doing, these beads are, the hole on one end is bigger than on the other. So you want the small end to be against the eye so that it doesn't come over the eye or come off. So what I do is I look in here for a bead that the small end is up. Yeah, I thought that one was. So I'll look through here. It's funny, they all seem to want to have the
pointing in the wrong direction, huh?
Yeah, pointing in the wrong direction. So I put this on my bodkin. And then I just come here, I take a hold of the bead, and I tip my bodkin up here and just slide it down. Whoops, I didn't do that real good that time. Onto the hook. And I lose fewer beads in the process doing that. So now, then I need to have it turned around. Yeah. Or stopping me.
You're hired. The check's in the mail.
Yeah. I thought I had the right one, and I did it about 4 times today, and every time it was right. So once you know tonight, I would get it on wrong. So we're going to do just a little base wrap here. Base wrap's not real important. And trim off the excess. Okay, the first thing I want to add is my copper wire. And as you can see, I'm using the copper wire that we got from telephone business. So we'll take this out of my clip. Okay, I'm going to hold this to the back side, letting the thread torque kind of place it underneath. I always kind of have to push it back with my thumb, though it wants to come too far around, but there we go. And then the next thing we're going to put on, of course, is our tail material. So I'll come over here in the materials and get a piece of this brown Antron. This Antron, it does have a dark brown too. This is
You're off camera.
This is the light brown I'm using. And I looked at the dark brown today, but it's just a little too dark. I like this color better. And I want to tie it on at about the half point. So about there. And I want to tie it back to the end of the shank. And I've got that's at a little bit of an angle. I'm going to tip it up. It's bugging me. There, that's better.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
And now I'll come over to the materials and I'll get some white. This white has a tendency for some reason to be kind of knotted. So as you can see, this is kind of knotted. So it's good to get it straightened out before you tie it on the hook. Boy, that is really knotted. Maybe I'll try the other end, see it's better. Yeah, I'll use this end. So this, I'm going to tie on so it's facing out over. And I don't worry too much about the length at this point. I just want to be sure that I have enough because I will trim it to length after I get it tied into the proper position. So you can just take it, both of them, you can take it down, and I want the length to be about the gap of the hook. But this one I'm going to do a little bit more because I have to come back and I lose just a little bit of the length that way. So cut her off about there. That looks about right because I want it to go about halfway back. Same thing here. There we go. And the next thing we do is the peacock. So we'll come back here and then forward. So we've got a nice start. I tried 2 pearls, and that was too much. It made it too fluffy. So I'm just going to use 1. It would just look like a little fat pig. It was so, and the wing couldn't even lay down. So 1 is plenty. Okay. And I'm just doing a regular wrap. Al's going to show you some other things you can do. There's several different ways that we apply this, but right tonight I'm just going to do it this way. Tie it off. Cut off the excess. Now I'm going to wrap, and I'm just going to wrap the wire in the regular direction because I won't do as many wraps as I did with the peacock. So I will still be going across the ricosum. So let's just, this just gives it a little strength. Tie that off. I'm pushing the wing back into position, and I'm going to tie up over it so that it is going in the right direction. And I'm going to take my bodkin, spread this out a little bit. Or is it not in there? There, I got him. There, that looks better. That looks more like a wing now. And the final piece is a little bit of hackle. And just like always, we clear off a section just by ripping off the fibers, and then I'm going to take a few extra on the leading edge, tie it in. Now what I do with this is I'm going to take the stem end and push it back with my thumb nail, hold it in place, and then, yep, that didn't work. There we go. I got it that time, I think. Yeah, it's been stubborn. There we go. And just hide it. I just hide it in that peacock. However, you can see it, can't you?
Yeah, it's a pretty long one.
Yeah, well, I think I'll leave it alone though. If I start messing with it, I'll probably mess up my fly. It's funny, you can see it on the screen, but you can't see it.
Yes, somebody was saying the other week that this teaching on Zoom has made all of us look at our flies a lot more carefully, and I have to admit that I'm one of them. I can't believe some of the stuff that got by me that sure shows up on camera.
Lights in my way. Not only the camera, but the lights. Okay, trim off the excess and get my whip finish tool. And then normally I put a little dollop of glue right there. That is it.
Any questions for Gretchen?
And I can, when I really get to pumping on those, I can tie a bunch of those in an hour.
A couple dozen an hour without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Just one real quick one, Gretchen, Al too. How does it fish relative to the Beattys version with Beattys instead of
Better, especially if you have any kind of cloud cover. It'll fish better than the Beattys version. And if you get a really bright day, the Beattys version might be a better choice because it just doesn't reflect quite as much.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you run into a lot, let's take the Yellowstone River for an example, and it's very common. The Madison, the Bighorn, all the other Montana rivers are the same. Let's just take the Yellowstone. It's not uncommon to have cloud cover coming and going all day long. 10 minutes of bright sun and a few minutes of this and that and various cloud covers. And it happens where everybody lives. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that it takes fish with a real severe light volume change, if you will, it takes fish about 20 minutes to adjust. And one of the toughest days to fish on a river is when the cloud cover is coming and going about. I mean, they're just constantly coming through. In Montana, you got a wind and the clouds are just coming through, light in, light out. But if you can get a stretch where it either stays in or out, one or the other, you got a chance for the fish to come out and play because they're having a tough time feeding because the light keeps changing. And that's also a great time when you have a day like that to see if your clients or you and your friends want to stay a little bit late on the water rather than getting back to town to have a beer at the local pub or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say the evening then.
The evening is phenomenal.
Yes, most of the people are off the river, and you can just pound those scum lines along the bank, and
the fish have been dying of starvation all day long because they just really couldn't quite get focused in on their food. They are really after it.
Gretchen, I have a quick question. That was Antron you used, correct?
yes,
And did you use the full thickness of the piece of Antron or?
yeah, this lure flash is not real heavy.
Okay.
It's
So-
pretty, I mean, compared to a strand of poly, it's probably about a fourth of a strip of
Yeah.
the same.
But even when we tie these, when you get down to 16s, you'll take a little bit less than a full strand, and on
Yeah,
18, you'll take a half a strand.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right.
You don't
Thanks.
you don't need a lot of when you're using Antron because it refracts the light so that you know the volume is not really what they're seeing, and they're seeing the light reflection.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions before we go on?
Fish, if you're not opposed to catching, you know, on a slow day sometimes. One time we were on the river and it was the salmon fly hatch, and they were so thick everywhere that you couldn't fish with that because there were just too many of them on the river. If
Yeah,
that makes any
just-
sense.
Just clouds of them.
Doing good at all. And so we decided to heck with that. We put on a Prince Nymph and started fishing for whitefish and had a good time.
Yep. Often will happen that way.
Yeah, sometimes you got a nymph if the hatch is too heavy, especially with those salmon flies, and they just get so full, the fish.
Yep. Any other questions? What size of hackle? Is what Aaron just asked. And good question. And that was a size 14 hook, and that was a size 14 hackle. And you know, and it's up to you on that hackle. I'm going to show you something in my two favorite flies that you don't use the traditional sized hackle. So it's sort of up to you. One of the things about fishing flies, do what works well in your waters. That would be the best way. And if you're tying flies to win fly tying contests, and you may not get the same results for the fish, they're a different judge for they take flies for a different reason than a fly tying judge would.
And on this fly, I'm not sure it really particularly matters a
I
lot.
don't think it makes a whole hell of a lot.
The peacock is going to vary.
Yeah, and sometimes we've had it where the hackle came loose and was hanging clear out the back, and you're still catching
You're
fish.
still catching fish.
It's just one of those. It's probably in our top 6 flies. That's one of them.
Yeah.
But if there's nothing else, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a moment to step into the tips area. But before I get there, how do I want to say this? We've had some help from Australia and help from California about teaching. And first off, I would like to share with you Michael Paradas giving a Thanksgiving class on fly tying. And I really appreciate Michael sending me this picture of the person or whatever that was teaching the class. I do want you to notice one thing though, laying down in front of the vise on the table, that feather is not a turkey feather. I just thought I'd throw that in there for the
Well,
heck
you
of it.
think that turkey's gonna want to use its own feathers?
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. But anyway, thank you, Michael, for a little bit of. So now, what I really want to get into is the lead in for my two patterns. And in Sydney, Australia, David Wilson has become a really good long distance friend. One of these good friends that you have that you've never met, but you meet them on Zoom all the time. Well, this is one of the slides, PowerPoint slides that he used recently in a presentation to the Sydney Fly Rodders. And he was talking about something that you and I are going to talk about in a few minutes. And it's about what we call the tie wrap way of tying different materials off. Also, I want you to notice the blue box in the lower center is a reference to some of the same concept coming from Dutch Bachman's thread control, and it was number 51, where it's called rachis management and how it's wrapped around the thread and or wrapped around the hook. But anyway, so much for that. Then there was one other thing when we get to it, you'll see in my second fly, it will be a parachute, and it's another way of doing the tie wrap system on a parachute. And again, that same reference is to Dutch Bachman's PowerPoint presentation. But anyway, just so you know, that's the Australia slides part of the weekly tip. But we'll get to the Cricut part in a little bit. But for now, let me just reach over here and slip a roadmap fly into the vise. And now I'm going to come back to the recipe. And the recipe is a fly we call the Trude. And to tell you about the Trude, back in the 80s, I had a good friend from the fly fishing club in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, whom I fished with all the time. His name was Ray Miles. And he pretty much tied his own stuff and didn't much give a darn whether it was even close to something that would win a contest. Only contest he was concerned about was the one which was what was jumping around on the end of his line. The Trude is one of these flies. And I cannot tell you how many times we'd be fishing on the river, and I have caught a fish or two. I mean, I was a pretty good fisher then, and it got even better as the years went by, but I was a good fisher at that time. And Ray'd be down there, and he'd be into his fifth fish, and I'd still be working on number 2 or 3. I said, finally, I'd holler down, hey, Ray, what are you using? Oh, it's just a Trude. Well, the Trude, you're going to see how it goes together. It's very simple. It really should stay simple. We start out with a wet or dry fly hook, size 8 to 20. Thread is black. The tail is optional. I'm going to tie without a tail tonight. I've done the tail, but I don't see where it does me any particular good. The rib can be thread, wire, tinsel, or you don't even have to have a rib. The body is peacock. Hackle is brown or grizzly or whatever you happen to have laying on your desk. I'm going to use brown tonight. The wing is calf tail and it's sparse. And the head is thread. And that's a picture of the Trude. Now I want you to take notice of this guy. The wing is not particularly long. Just barely makes it to the end of the body. I want you to notice how long the hackle is. I've tried to tie the things that would win a contest, and which means that the hackle would come back to about the hook point and all that stuff, but you get a lot better action out of this stuff in the water. And the way we tie this is going to be important too, and we'll get to that. But for right now, I need to move my materials over here to the materials area. Move my little rack. Okay, get the hair stacker and glasses. I'll get them over here. Okay, we've got hooks here, and I'm going to need the cap tail, and it's kind of in my way, so I'm just going to move it over here to the vise so I can get to it easier. And I want you to notice that the hackle that I'm using can be anything under the sun. I just happened to stumble across an trimmed hen cape that I got when I worked at Whiting Farms. It has, when I say untrimmed, they're usually nicely trimmed around like this to go in the package, and all this
You're
stuff
having
gets,
trouble staying into the
oh,
camera.
excuse me. Thank you, dear. Usually it's trimmed around like this to go in a retail package, and all of this stuff gets tossed. There's some awful good stuff here, and that's some of what I'm going to be using tonight. If I do a rib, I've got wire here, I've got thread. I'll just set that over at the vise. And I guess we'll get back to the vise now, and I'll just set a hook in the vise. Now, I don't need this hook, but no, we'll get that out of the way. Now, I am going to spend some time tonight because these are so doggone simple. I mean, I could tie them up in a couple minutes and then we'd be signing off here in about 15 minutes. And we want to turn this into a little bit of a teaching process as well. So I am going to show you some ways of doing bodies with peacock and making them bulletproof and making them not look like they've been, well, like they're not bulletproof, if you know what I'm trying to say. Now I'm going to start my thread right about here. And I'll just wrap to the back of the hook. And I'll rack back forward to the front. I'll reach over here to the materials area now and get some peacock. And I'll just strip that off, go back over here to the vise. And one of the things that causes me lots of fits if I'm trying to make stuff work fine is these little curly cues on the end. So that's what the scissors are for. Now I've got one here that's all kind of kinky and stuff. I'm going to see whether I can get by and using it and not break it, but we'll see. See how that works out. I want you to notice how I wrap this. If you go to the number 3 camera, Gretchen. Yeah, how I wrap this, and I'm pushing this wild end of the peacock around. Now, if I go real fast, it's going to get tangled. And if I try to get too short, it's going to get tangled. But if I keep about 1 inch of working thread and I come around and pause, 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 and it keeps you from getting all tangled up in that material there. Now I'm going to use a method of wrapping a body that I learned from Dutch Bachman. We used this particular process for years for keeping our hackle on Trude flies in place, but Dutch wraps peacock and ostrich and stuff, and he wraps it against the weight of a bobbin, either going forward on the hook or back, and I'm going back on the hook. Remember, I'm trying to make a bulletproof fly. And so I'm working my way back towards the back of the hook and getting a really nice placement and positioning and tightness of those turns because of the weight of the bobbin. Now, normally, when people wrap like this, they tie off with a couple of turns, and now they've got waste to trim away. And well, you got to cover that up or you get kind of a bad looking body. So let's get to the tie wrap system. Now the tie wrap system is something that Gretchen and I developed a few years ago to allow us to make small heads. And we've learned in time that it's really good for a whole lot of other stuff. And what that is we wrap the material around the thread in such a way that the waste material will be hidden in the application of wrapped material. This is kicked back. If I was to wrap it around the thread going the other way, my waist is going to point out the back. So you have to have that waist pointing in the right direction. And I want you to see how that's sticking out the back there. So, but I want my waist to be pointing into the wrapped peacock. So let me make sure that I'm going in a direction that allows that to happen. Let's see, I get this undone. I'm going to end up breaking this, dinking around talking to you about it, but that's all right. Okay. My thread is, let me see, where am I? Here we go. Now, we want the thread to come around and it has to come over the top on the side of the thread that's going to force it to be anchored and pushed against the wrapped peacock. So I've got 2 turns around that peacock. I'm going to come around and anchor it in place. And I didn't catch that. I did so much doing and undoing. Let me just back up here a little bit.
Yeah, you might want to do more than 2 turns.
There we go. Well, what happened is I actually, one of the turns that I went the wrong way was still there. Now, I want you to notice how it's there. It's wrapped around a thread, and I allow it to make my last turn of the body. You see how that kicks forward, and the waist is going to be hidden there in the wrapped body. So when I trim it, it'll be there. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rib forward with my thread. And that's crisscross wrapped because remember, the peacock started at the front and came to the back. The ribbing is going forward. So I'm bulletproofing it. And now let me trim this off. Get that out of the way. And I am going to take my hair packers and just tighten that up a bit. Now, another thing that you can do is you can just take your thumbnail and push on that, making sure that that wrap of peacock with a thread around it is pushed in tight so you have a nice clean end to your body. You don't have any waist sticking out there. All right, so much for that now. Now we're going to get into the feathers. Let me get over the materials area. And I've got a couple of feathers that I've already pulled out, so I'm going to do that. But they came from out of here, and I got some from out of here in the trim. It's up to you what you would want to use. But I'm just going to get back over here to the vise now. And most of the time when people do a wet fly hackle, they tie in by the tip, fold the fibers back, and that's the way it's traditionally wrapped. Well, I'm going to do the reverse, and I'm going to show you why here in just a minute. One of the things I'm going to do is right there. Now, need to get right here, the stem, rachis, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty thick and it starts to come down here. I want to get down to where it's small, just a little bit further. There we go. Now, I'll tie that on. Couple of turns, pull the stem back. Take a half hitch and slip it in there so that doesn't slip off of that bent back stem. And then I'll trim the waist. And I don't need to worry about trimming that real close. Even if I was to cut it off there, it would be very well hidden in that hackle. But I don't want to make a mess out of it. Now, the other night when watching Rick Flink's techniques, he had Chris Johnson from Living Waters in Round Rock, Texas on. And he told us about C and F hackle pliers. Never had seen them before. And I said, well, that sure looks good. We'll just have to get them. And what I liked about it and what he talked about is that they're flexible, so that they look like they would hold the feather good. Well, they came this last week. Got to tell you, I have fallen in love with these things.
From my point of view, I have trouble with my hands. Some of them are too strong. And even though this holds good, I can open it easily. So
Yeah,
that's
so
another issue.
It does a good job of holding, and she can open the jaws. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, whoops, just dropped it. Of course, that breaks everything. And now I get to start over. Well, that's all right. I'm going to go back over to the materials area and get another feather. Let's see here. That looks like a good one. And we'll get back over here now and I'll still get right down into there. Okay, good.
Maybe not talk so much.
Not talk so much. This time I'm just gonna bind it in place, dog leg the hackle, stem back, half hitch. You know I love the hackle pliers by now, so we don't need to talk about that anymore. I'll trim that guy out. And I'm gonna fold the fibers. The way you fold them when you're tying in by the butt ends, at least what works really well for me, is to stroke them back and then pull forward. Learned that from John Kreft. See how that unfolds that? Now we'll just go ahead and make a wrap. Sweep back. Make a wrap. Sweep back. Now, one of the things that's really cool about wrapping it this way is as you wrap, the stem of the feather is getting finer and finer rather than thicker and thicker like it is the other way. And the other way, you have a heck of a time trimming that butt end off and covering up the big old glob of cut off stem that you got. Well, this stem gets even smaller and I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that to my advantage. But let me get that wrapped in here and I'm dog legging the hackle back. Here's the tip right here. Now, let me show you something on the tip. If I were to trim this off right here, there are fibers right there, not too dissimilar in color and everything of the ones that I just wrapped. Well, what I'm going to do is right back here where I trim the hackle off, I don't need to trim that stem right down tight against the hook because I'm going to use some of those fibers. See how they're sticking out there? Well, I am going to wrap now in there and anchor those down. And that is a way to, well, let's say you've got a weak spot in your wrapped hackle. And it happens all the time, at least it does to me. And if it doesn't to you, well, then that's good. I'm happy for you. Now, I've got something here and I can cause myself a problem if I'm tying a fly for competition or not for fish. I want you to notice right here, I have been trying to get a strand of thread to go over that spot, and the doggone thing will not. It just keeps slipping one way or the other, and I'm going to end up with a big head, and I don't want that. So I'm going to back up, and I'm going to get the fixer. And what is the fixer? Well, called the Sharpie. And I am going to turn this where that little spot is. Okay, now I can wrap over that, and you'll never know that there's a piece of stem there. I didn't do a good job of covering it up. Even the judge wouldn't know. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is to add the wing. But first, let's kind of straighten up this hackle because I really want this hackle long, fluffy, so it can really work in the surface film. Cannot tell you how many fish this fly has brought to me. There we go. All right, let's get over here to the calf tail. I'll just bring that over. And I want my wing to be sparse. I don't want it to be heavy. I don't want it to be the proper, anything proper about the dimensions or anything. Don't. You just want a little bit up there to kind of give the hint of color, if you will. And I'm just going to slip out here over the waist bin for a minute and get rid of the waist there. All right, now I've cleaned out the waist and get rid of some of these long curly cues out here. I'll slip this into the hair stacker and see if I can get it to even up in the stacker. And I'm only doing that so much because it's kind of an accepted practice that you should stack the hair. But the truth of the matter is, in your fishing flies, it'll make a heck of a lot of difference.
Did Ray stack his?
Ray never stacked a hair in his life. He was like Gary LaFontaine. Gary didn't stack the hair in his wings or anything. He just he says, try to have it sort of even. You can figure out what sort of even is. Now, I want you to notice that I'm going to try to tie that so it's about even with the end of the body, and I'll just trim off the waist.
I think you had a move there that I think is really important. You pulled on the second wrap, you pulled back
Oh, yeah.
towards the vise to keep it from slipping.
If I would have pulled straight down on this, it would have slipped right off of that little trimmed off thing that I did. As it is, what I did is, I'll back up here just a little bit. When I originally tied that on, see if I can get here to the point. Here we go.
You're asking for it.
Yeah, I am asking for it. Well, that's all right. The worst thing that's happened is I have to start over. But so let's pretend that I'm just getting these wraps on here. If I make this next wrap straight up and down, I'm in trouble. What you do is you bring the thread back like this and make a wrap pulling back.
And that keeps her from
Now,
slipping.
I'll really anchor them in there, and then I'll work my way down. And now I'll climb the hill from the front, covering up the best I can. And that's a pretty clean head, even though I wasn't worrying about that. That's still a pretty clean head for a calf tail wing assembly, if you will.
Oh,
Something wrong?
yeah, I leaned on something.
What happened? Oh, okay. Well, I'll fix it.
I don't know what I know. I can't. Oh, baby. Oh, I got out of it. I'm good.
Oh, you got it? Okay, good. Well, now you can see I've got the Trude, and cannot tell you how many fish it has caught for me. But let me explain to you. This is a Freestone River type of fly. I've never done real well with it in spring creeks. There's other flies that are my spring creek flies, and that's good for another presentation another time. But this one, the Trude, that guy right there has accounted for
So like on the Coeur d'Alene?
the Coeur d'Alene, the Yellowstone, the Madison, the Big Lost. I just could go on and on and on. If it's a Freestone River, this is going to be a good one for you. So any questions there before we move on?
Yeah, Al, what do you mean by a Freestone River?
A lot of round rocks. Not Spring Creek. It isn't. The fish aren't living around weed beds in a spring creek.
It flows a little
It
faster.
goes a little faster, yeah. The fish are hanging out behind rocks or in the eddies created by the current in relation to the rocks, and
Okay.
but
It's usually a little bigger than a spring creek.
yeah, Spring
Kinda like
Creek,
the South Platte would be that kind of a river.
the South Platte, yeah, where?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Now there are as an example, anybody who has fished the Madison River between Yellowstone Park and the town of Ennis, that is just one long freestone river. It goes past the town of Ennis and then drops into a canyon called the Bear Trap Canyon. And if you want to look at it on a map, you really ought to, because it goes through the Bear Trap, 9 miles of miserable. I started to go through it once and I said, you know what, this is stupid. I could end up dying. And so I came back and I didn't go through it. There's people I know that have gone through it, and I know the people that have died going through the Bear Trap. But where the river comes out of the Bear Trap, it just levels out and becomes about 20 miles of the most perfect spring creek you've ever seen. And it is reminiscent of the Railroad Ranch River, the Henry's Fork at the Railroad Ranch. That also is a
Big spring creek.
a big spring creek type of river, but it comes out of a pretty tough canyon before it gets to that spring creeky section. But anybody that wants some phenomenal brown trout fishing and you want to go to Bozeman and there's plenty of nice places to stay in Bozeman. This is 18 miles west of Bozeman and you hit that lower Madison River and when you'll hit it at about mile 5 downstream from the bear trap. And all I can tell you is that we've had phenomenal days together and with clients.
One problem is sometimes in the summer, there's a lot of floaters. Didn't used to be that way, but the last time we were there, remember all the floaters we saw? So September is probably a better time. And plus in September, the brown trout are in there cranky.
Oh yes, they're really on the move. But now let's go back to those floaters. Most of those floaters are college girls on inner tubes. And I can tell you, I've had clients request that I take them there strictly because they wanted to watch the things float by. We'll just let it go at that.
That's enough.
I won't tell any more,
That's
Brett.
fine.
I promise I won't tell any more.
Heard that story once.
Well, Al, I can tell you some stories about the Merced River when I was out there gold panning about the college girls that were on the rocks. I won't go any further than that.
You said the Merced River in California?
Yeah, the Merced, just outside Castle Air Force Base, and they'd be out sunbathing on rocks. And let me say nothing further.
I know Merced is my old stomping grounds. I fished the Merced from Merced Lake in Yosemite Park, all the way to where it joined I forget the name of the reservoir, but anyway, it's downstream a long ways to the reservoir. Yeah, I know it real well, John. That's home waters to me.
Yeah, it is. It's great waters.
Absolutely phenomenal. Anyway, questions from anybody else on this?
No more college girls.
Okay, I'll get back on subject, dear.
Back on subject, what kind of hook was that?
That was a standard dry fly hook.
Dry fly hook, okay, thanks.
But it could be a wet fly, it could be a sprout. You could do whatever you want to on that. It's
Oh, Aaron says one of his answers was a river without a dam.
I don't know, I'm gonna try it on the white. Looks good to me.
Rock and Owl Creek, Wyoming, and Purdue. What is that in Colorado? Poudre. I've never. Where's that?
Oh,
It's a Poudre River in Colorado,
Where is it?
but by Fort Collins, north into the north side of the Rocky Mountain Park.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I haven't fished that one.
no, we have not fished that one. Anyway, if there's no other,
Poudre.
It's the Poudre.
okay, well, it's whatever you want to call it, we haven't fished it, so we cannot speak with any, shall we say, authority on that. Anyway, any other questions before we go to the next one? Because I'm not even going to give you a roadmap fly on this one. We're just going to go right into it.
Let's go for it.
All right, we got it.
Let's do it.
We're going to be using many of the same things. Let's get this out of the vise. And let me get another hook here. Again, this is a dry fly hook. This will be a dry fly.
What size is that?
What size is the 10?
Oh, 10.
And let's just take a quick look now at the recipe. The Dirty Rat.
Oh,
It's a size 8 to 22. Thread is black. The rib is it's a choice, or don't do one at all. The body is peacock. The wing is calf or poly. The hackle is grizzly brown or whatever's laying on your desk. And we need to talk about this fly for just a little bit.
you can tell the story, aren't you?
I'm going to tell the story right now. It's
a good story.
It's a good story. Back in the day, every September, this friend of mine from the phone company in Kalispell, Montana, and I from the phone company in Sandpoint, Idaho, we'd get together and we'd go fish the Bighorn River in Montana. And
with the other guy.
And there was a number of other guys that we fished with, several times with Marvin Nolte. But we always would fish with a guy by the name of Don Richards, and he was a postman from Helena, and he'd get off work on like Thursday and then spend most of the day driving Friday, and he'd arrive sometime late Friday afternoon, and we'd hit the river together on Saturday morning. And he fished the weekend with us. Well, there's this, for the first time that he fished with Bob and I, this good buddy that was from the Kalispell Phone Company. Geez, we were about halfway through the morning and Bob and I were taking a whip and neither one of us had caught a fish. And Don was into like 4 or 5 fish, nice fish. And holy Christ, what's going on here? So finally, Bob and I walked downstream to where Don was. And I can say, partner, I don't care what you tell us about. You just got a simple peacock, a simple parachute on. You're going to show us what the heck you got there. And he did. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it at all, that what it was and how simple it was and how effective it was. It's so effective that I want you to go down to where it says peacock body or choice. I have a complete box full of dirty rats in every size, color imaginable, all tied the same way, all the same simplicity you're going to see, and all just absolute killer son of a guns. It works really well if you let it stay wet and stay just under the surface, or if you grease it up, it'll, like any parachute, it'll float on the surface. So it's mostly a surface fly, and a lot of times I'll be trailing either a small EZY Prince like Gretchen tied, or one of the Trudes.
But you didn't tell him why it was called a dirty rat.
Well, we're getting to that.
Oh, okay.
We went back and finally we got together for lunch, and Don said, "You guys do any good?" Because he had given us a couple of flies, and I said, "Yeah, we did. We caught a couple of fish each. Great." And Bob turns to me and said, he used different words than what I'm going to use, but he says, he is sure a dirty rat for not telling us about this fly a long time ago. You can figure out what the other words were. But anyway, the name Dirty Rat has stuck, and that's why it's got the name Dirty Rat, is because Don Richards, do you notice that Don Richards and Dirty Rat both have the same initials? Enough said. Anyway, back to the vice.
Dirty rat does not describe him as a person. He's a really sweet, sweet man.
Oh, he's a really great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, to the vice.
Yeah, to the vice. Okay. Now I'm not going to do a calf tail wing this time. I am going to, why are my threads slipping on me here? Let me get it fixed. There we go. I'm going to do a poly. For those of you that maybe are not real good at tying with calf, hey, this is a fly you want to go fishing with. So we'll do it with poly. Let me slip over here and get in the area here and get the poly yarn. And I'll just grab this chunk. And most poly yarn has got knots in it, and this has got knots in it here too. So I'm just going to kind of fluff it apart there and get the knots out so that I can only use part, because this is just about right for a size 10 wing, but you're going to see the way that I do the post. It's about right for a number 10 post. If you were just to stand this up and make a post out of it, it would be just about right. Well, I'm going to tie this a little different. I'm going to kind of control some of the, let's get rid of this, get rid of a little bit more of that. Good. Now, I've got about half of that thrown away. And what I'm going to do now is just trim that off right there and tie it on right there. Now, you'll see why I got rid of part of that, because I'm going to pull it up here and bind that into place. Trim the waist at a nice angle so that I can kind of make a tapered body out of it. Already. Now, let me just wrap up my post, strengthen that a little bit by putting in some concrete and rebar. You all have heard about that before. There's the rebar going in. let's pour some more concrete. That's wrapping it around and around. My cement mixture is going around and around is what's happening. Now I put in that strand of rebar and it's really getting sturdy there. And I'll end up trimming this loop off of it. But for right now, I just want to keep that out of my way. Okay, now I'm going to need, let's see, what do I need? Need peacock. I'll get over here to the materials. I'll grab some peacock and my grizzly hackle. However, it could be any hackle. I just happen to have grizzly here. Now I'm just going to pull that off, and I got about 4 of them here. And I'll just trim those wild ends there off a bit. I'm going to set that aside for a second because there's something else that I want to do. Let me get back over here and get some wire from my materials area. Get some of this good telephone wire. Cut a chunk of that and just take it back over here to the vise. And I'll just notice I was pulling down on that, so it's mostly down on the bottom there. Okay. Now I'm going to pull that back and use the magnet on my Shaw anchor. Keep that all pulled out there. Notice that. Oh, let me turn it so you can see the. Yeah, there we go. You can see the jungle cock on it there. That looks really nice. Now let's get back here and tie in. Let's see. Peacock. All right. Now I'll get my hackle. And I want a fairly long stripped off stem of that hackle so I can get to the top of my parachute post. And let's just flip that over and tie that to the post. I should have waited to put that peacock on. And so you want to put this down in your list of to-dos is don't put the peacock on until after you've tied on the hackle. Just so you know, not because I'm going to go back here and I'm going to fix my mistake with a pair of scissors. That's how it fixes that. And I'll just get some more peacock here. There we go. Trim off the curlicues. Tie this on by the tip. Okay. Now I'm just going to use the Bachman technique to wrap this peacock to the back. And I'm going to come around twice to do the tie wrap so I can get a nice tie off location. Trim the excess. Now I am going to counter wrap. That's what's making this bulletproof. So I've got a rib on it twice, going 2 different ways. All right, well, let's trim off that. I want to take my thread straight from the eye back to the post and take a turn around the post. Now, we're going to do what Dave in Australia suggested, and we're going to wrap our hackle this way. And on the tie wrap, we need to hide the waist so that it's sticking up into the wing post. Just so we're going to take wraps around our thread so that that is the way it ends up, and it'll have to be, let me figure this out.
Under and then over.
Okay, now it's going to be under and over, around, under, over. Now I'm going to take and wrap around the post. I want you to notice that the waist of the feather is positioned in the wrapped hackle. You'll never see it.
Crazy.
Now we'll take and cut that off. Now what I want you to notice, let me see if I can turn it here. There is no stubbies sticking down from tied off hackle. So we'll just bring this forward. Half hitch, another half hitch. And one of the good things about whip finishing with a half hitch is that you don't have to disturb your hackle. And I got to let it collapse over to be a whip finish. I'll do that again. Okay, there we go. And now you've got a dirty rat. And it can be any color, any size, anything that you want it to be. And one of the things I want you to notice, the wing is back a little bit further than you normally would have on a parachute. Why is that? It's the way we want to position it in the water. And it seems to position better in the water that way for what we want it to, or for what it does with this fly. It's one of the few where I'd probably have the wing post back at the 1/3 point, or even a little bit further back than that, than where a regular one would be right about where I've got my scissors pointing. Let me get my pointer. Right about where I got my pointer going right now. That's about where a ring would be on the wing would be on a regular parachute, and this is back just slightly, not in the
Can you
middle,
turn it more so the wing is facing the camera?
like that.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's where a regular one would be.
Yeah.
This one is right there. Not much difference, but it sets a little different in the water. Okay, and any questions on that? No questions, good. Then we're going to get on to something else then. The second part of the weekly tip. Cricket flies. Now, this is kind of a tease for an upcoming program because we have been working with our good friend Jeff in Niagara Falls, New York. And he's been telling us about this cricket. Well, quite frankly, when he first contacted us about the cricket, we were both really heavy into, at that time, into our gardening program that we were working on in the YouTube channel. We thought he was talking about something to do with gardening. And so we said, well, we think we know what you're talking about, and went looking for it, and we couldn't find any crickets except for live crickets in the doggone gardening area that we were looking for. So finally we got it all straightened out to find out he's using a machine that works on a computer called a Cricut. And what I'm going to do is I'm only going to share with you some of the things that Jeff has sent us that this Cricut will do. And I'll let him explain a little bit about what's going on. But I want to first show you a fly that Jeff tied with the Cricut. And Gretchen, why don't you go to the vice camera? And that is a fly that Jeff tied with parts made with a Cricut. I said, holy Christ almighty, talk about looking good. Oh, man. So anyway, let's get another one here that Jeff sent us. And this is one that just really grabbed my attention. I got several ponds in Montana that this is just made for. And that's this guy right here. Damselfly. Wow, what a good looking one. Well, Jeff, tell us about this, and I'm going to get some parts and start showing the parts while you tell us a little bit about this Cricut.
Well, the Cricut works off of mathematics, just like a CNC machine or some of the other machines out there that use mathematic programs, and I have no idea what the programs are. The software is, runs on your computer, and it has to access the internet in order to do these little critters. That's a frog there. I copied some parts off the internet. Some of them, the software itself has different, I would call them templates, like O's or egg-shaped symbols or templates that you can use. You can combine those templates and stretch them different directions or collapse them different directions. That frog there, the most of the pattern I actually found on the internet and copied it, and then I brought it into the software and resized it a little bit. That's made out of a pattern of, there you go. There's what it starts out to be. And then you kind of squeeze it together. The piece between his finger and his thumb there, that ties down to the hook first, and then toward the back, and then it folds over, and so that it the other way, Al. Yeah, yeah. It no, no, there you go. There you go. There you go. And then it folds over the top, and you put your body underneath first. There you go. You put your body on the hook, your tail and your body. And I think I made the body out of peacock herl under the bottom there, and then laid the top over it and created the segments with my thread. And you can use stick-on eyes. You can do different kind of thing. That one folds over the same direction, and you put one segment in the middle of it, and it creates a spider, which size 10 or 12 hook. I make those spiders in a couple of different sizes of bodies. And there's a couple of flies there. There's a fly there, and then the bodies that I use to create those insect patterns, and they really float quite well. The damselfly, the wings, actually, I found some wings on the internet, copied the wings, and then I use vellum, which is used for overhead projection, and it's printable with an inkjet printer. I print those wings, and then the Cricut cuts the wings out for me. It shapes them, cuts them out, and then it cuts them out in a right and a left, because you want the ink to show on the outside so that it's more visible. And then that's just a hackle wrapped around there to create the legs. And then the body segments are those I put a piece of foam on a needle and create segments, wrapping it around and squeeze it down, and then I leave a tag in and pull it. That's that cicada there. That's the wings are printed and then cut. There's 3 pieces of body there. That one has got the hook glued in, cut a slit in it and glued it. Now I found with a little bit larger hook and a little longer, I can actually take the hook, wrap it with thread, put glue on it, and punch it through the back toward a little bit further back than that one's mounted. And I can just punch a hole through there for the hook. And it's much faster and quicker, and it's actually far less time consuming. But the eyes are made out of beads. Pins. I've actually got a couple of stick pins. I don't know if Al's got them or not. But I've got those are made out of stick pins, a number 22 stick pin. And I use that. Let's see right here. I've got one here, Al.
Okay, we can see it.
That's a long shank. And actually they're white like this. And then I dip them down in paint.
Sure, sure.
And that gives me and then I actually stick them through a little block of wood, which has holes in it. There we go. Has holes in it. And that's the right length. And I just cut them off with a pair of snips cutters.
Sure, sure. Well, what we're going to do, folks, is Jeff's got me interested in this so much. I don't want to buy another tool, and he's got one. Well, he is in the process of getting the camera equipment that he needs to make a presentation on this. So he and I will be working on getting his Zoom studio up to speed, and sometime in the future, we're going to have Sam Matalone doing 3D printing of stuff for fly tying. And sometime in the future, we're going to have Jeff Dosser showing us about crickets. So much for that. Any
Hey,
questions
Jeff?
for Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff, what model Cricut is that?
Mine's a Cricut Maker.
Maker?
And
Okay.
yeah, I bought it on sale on Amazon. It was $159 or something like that. It was a couple of years ago I bought it. It was a super bargain then, but it's just the Maker. You don't need the real fancy one.
Okay, any other questions for Jeff before we move on? Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate that, and I appreciated that box of goodies that you sent me. I've been just kind of drooling over the darn thing ever since we got it, but thank you so much. Anyway, for
You're
now,
welcome.
we're going to go into a section called sharing, and this is where you all share with us some of your things, and we always start out with our good friend, Evelyn. And Evelyn, you're going to tell us about the, there's Gretchen's fly. Good job.
Yeah,
That was the easy one
there's
to
that
do.
one. For you. Here's the Trude.
Thank you. Looks good. Looks good. Thank you.
And then here's the last one, the Dirty Rat. Whoops.
Dirty rat. We love dirty rat.
Good job. Oh, good job on the dirty rat. I like that. Like
Well,
that a lot.
thanks.
Thank you. Anything else, Evelyn?
No, not at the moment. I've got the patterns, so I'm gonna write those down under their
Wonderful. Well,
recipes.
is
Yeah.
there anybody out there that has anything else they want to share with us? I
Thank
see
you.
a bunch of thread.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems I've had since I had to move into my smaller office is trying to find storage. And thread has always been a problem because the thread comes unwound and it gets all over the place. So I found these, what they call pencil boxes, out on Amazon. And they are exactly the right size for thread. And I can put all my thread down in here with the tops up so I can see what they are. And then I mark them on this side and this side, so I can stack them on my shelf and I know exactly what I've got. And that works really, really well.
Excellent.
Then I said,
Anything-
well, why not just do it for something else too? So I had a whole bunch of hooks that were just loose hooks. So I found these boxes here, And I said, oh, I'll just do the same thing. So I put all the hooks in different boxes. The blue are the dry, and the red is our. Wait, let me see if I can figure this out. There we go. The red is nymph and dry and wet hooks.
Wonderful.
Thanks to
Anything
Susan
else?
Parsons. I went one step further and did the same thing, and I just started this one. And Susan gave us this idea last week of putting our dubbing in these little boxes. And she used a drill to drill the hole. I used a solder iron, but the same results. And then I just put them in this box, and now I can collect all of my dubbing in one place and put it on the shelf, and I've got it ready to go. So
How cool. Wonderful.
storage.
Beautiful.
Ain't it great to be organized?
Oh, yeah, you don't know, man. I tell you what, I got so tired of tripping over a loose thread hanging on the floor.
John,
That's
thank
good.
you so much. Thank you so much, John. Okay, folks, that's it for now. It's a wrap until next time. And next time, let's see, will be I think it's Mike Kelly from Project Healing Waters in Omaha. But we'll have to verify that to be sure. But anyway, we'll be seeing you next week. Thanks for joining us.